What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Murph, and today we're going to expand upon a video I did yesterday regarding resource allocation, how to use them, how to budget them, and what you really should be focusing on using your different resources such as gold and energy and everything else. It's going to be talking about the current meta. Now, when we first talk about the current meta of the game, we kind of have to define what we're talking about specifically. So when we talk about the meta of this game, there's really only two metas. There's arena mode and there's the raid. There's no other content in the game to be played right now. That is it. So when we focus on building teams and using the resources we talked about yesterday, we want to be using these resources on teams that are going to benefit these game modes. Now, I'm not really here to talk about arena because at this point of the game, really everybody should be playing their own. Everybody should already have their arena team picked out. And honestly, there isn't much of an arena meta, it seems like. It's just there's several teams that are performing well, and ultimately what it seems like the meta is having the most heavily invested into team in order to compete in the arena. There really hasn't been like a whole lot of shakeups or really enough resources for people to widely invest in multiple teams for there to be like a well-established meta, like a rock paper scissors type of meta where like this team counters this team, but then it's countered by this team, which is countered by this team, and so on, right? Like when I think about arena metas, I think back to Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, where we had like the Darth Traya meta, and then that was defeated and countered by the Jedi Knight Revan meta, which was countered by Darth Revan, which was countered by General Skywalker, and then all the Galactic Legends and everything else that came in the game. But ultimately, right now, in my opinion at least, you can flame me in the comments if you want, there really is no arena meta. There's Rohan trio teams out there, there's Isengard teams out there, there's Rivendell teams out there. Hell, there's Mordor out there, Road to Rivendell. There's some chopped and sliced teams where it's 3 Rohan and Strider and Ironhide, and there's teams where it doesn't matter what the hell you're running, you just throw Ironhide on there maxed out and you're good to go, but I digress. So we're not really going to cover the arena meta right now because in my opinion, there isn't a well-established one. We're going to be talking about the raid. As of right now, whereas arena is where you're going to gather all of your in-game currency for your gems here. It's going to be your number one free-to-play income for gems. The raid itself is going to be where you're going to be able to get the most resources for your account's growth to be able to invest back into your teams outside of the actual, I can't even pull up personal rewards, can I? Guild rewards, here we go. So yeah, guild rewards, obviously from clearing certain checkpoints in the game with your guild, you will get guild rewards from the guild chests. But the ultimate thing is each chapter you're going to be going through getting all this additional gold and raid currency and experience, and eventually you'll even have crystals on here too. But this is what's going to build your account. The more points you put into the raid, the more rewards you're going to get out of it. The more rewards you get out of it, the more you can put into your teams. The more you put into your teams, the more points you get, and you see where we're going with this. So when we talk about defining a meta, if you have watched my previous content on Marvel Strike Force that I did like over a year ago when I used to play, you know that I love spreadsheets. So what we're going to kind of look at here is we're going to look at some spreadsheets based off of, I want to give a shout out to a user in the unofficial Lord of the Rings Discord, Raiden. Raiden has made a lot of great infographics for the actual raid chapters themselves. So I'm not claiming this is my work, this is his work, but what I've essentially done is I've taken his graphics and his advice on the different tiers of teams from the raid chapters, and I've compiled it all in just one spreadsheet for myself to use right here. So as you can see, what we're looking at, we'll kind of go chapter by chapter very briefly here. You'll see in chapter 1, you're seeing Rivendell, Haradrim, Rohan, and Road to Rivendell are really considered the top tier teams for that chapter. They're performing the best. And then you've got kind of Mordor and Misty Mountain Goblins with the Goblin King, or I guess it's Bolg, with the rest of them kind of taking up a mid-tier kind of area. Rangers are doing okay. And then you've got Isengard, Legolas, Lead Elves, and Dwarfs taking up the bottom. Now you'll notice Gondor's not on here. Gondor wasn't on the team when his infographics were made. I do think Gondor is going to be a phenomenal team in Chapter 1, and even with minimal investment, I'm easily clearing difficulty 1 to 100k. But I have not been able to invest in Gondor further to be able to push higher difficulties to really be able to advocate for them. So there's kind of an asterisk next to Gondor there, even though they're not on the spreadsheet. We talk about Chapter 2. We'll see that even though Isengard is a bottom tier team for Chapter 1, even though Chapter 1, Isengard is very, very good at rolling stacks on the bombers, they're just not great for overall AoE damage. Dogs are freaking out over something. All right. So, but Isengard was the first team to hit 900k. That is a fully maxed out difficulty 3 run in Chapter 2. You also see that Haradrim are another top tier team with Rivendell Elves and Legolas. Now, I've tried the Legolas lead variant with the Rivendell Elves and wasn't too impressed with it, but it's probably because my Legolas does not have a lot of investment in it, and it's still only 3 stars because I did not buy anything from the marquee. And then on top of that, you will see the dwarves are at the top of Chapter 2 as well. And then we'll see kind of the goblins again performing high. We'll see Rohan, Road to Rivendell, and Mordor all kind of performing in the middle tier against the troll. And then we'll see Rangers, Misty Mountain, and Gondor all kind of taking up the rear. Gondor is only at the rear because they're still kind of unknown as well. It's still kind of the same thing as Chapter 1 with the asterisk. So I wouldn't put them at the bottom of the barrel, but they're unknown right now from me. If you have invested into Gondor, please leave a comment down below. Let me know how they're doing in Chapter 1 and 2. But you'll also see here down at the end of Chapter 3, we've got Gondor up on top. We've got Rivendell and Haradrim still as top tier teams. We've got Goblins as a top tier team as well. We've also got, come on. That's embarrassing. Good thing I have that covered up. Phone locked out. Yes, I am recording off my phone. We've got Gondor, Rivendell, Haradrim, Goblins staying at the top. Then we've got kind of the speed cheese meta after that with all the other teams, Rohan, Isengard, Road to Rivendell, Rangers, Dwarves, whatever. Everything else kind of falling down there, right? And so with this being said, what we want to do is parse through this. And when we invest into our teams, we don't have the luxury of being able to invest in the 5 best teams from Chapter 1 and then the 5 best teams from Chapter 2 and the 5 best teams from Chapter 3, right? We don't have that kind of resources to build all these different teams. So really what I want to look at when I'm investing my resources right now is I want to build 5 teams that will have the strongest applicability across all 3 chapters. So when you look at this, we look at Rivendell, Haradrim, Goblins. All these teams are performing very, very well across the raid. So what I've done is I've essentially assigned point totals towards each of these teams for each chapters. And as you can see here, where are we at? Oh my God. All right, hold on. We're just going to do this old school. Oh my God. Lock your shit, Murph. What are you doing? Where are we at? Where's the Excel? There it is. All right, let's move this shit over here. Boom. There we go. So as you can see, we've got a bit of a kind of checklist here. And what I did was essentially just assign point totals. So if a team is at the top of the chapter tier list, they got a 1. If they're mid tier, they got a 2. If they're bottom of the barrel, they got a 3. Add them up across the chapters. Lower point total means they're better across the board, and higher point totals means they're bad. So look at this, and we see that we've got Rivendell, Haradrim are the 2 best teams across the board in the raids right now. We've got Goblins, Road to Rivendell, Gondor, and Rohan kind of taking up the area after that. And then we've got Rangers, Isengard, kind of in the middle to like low tier. And it's only because Isengard is not very good in Chapter 1 or 3. They're amazing in Chapter 2, so they do get a bit of a bump. Mordor and Misty Mountains with Bolg and the Dwarves as well, they're kind of all bottom of the barrel right now. Even though Dwarves are like the best team or one of the best teams for Chapter 2, they're just not performing well in other areas. Now, little caveat before I get flamed in the comments, Haradrim is performing or underperforming according to a lot of people. However, from what I have heard from at least the whales who have invested heavily into Haradrim, they are performing as advertised and performing amazingly across all 3 chapters. So there's some asterisks next to Haradrim where right this second, if you are a free-to-play player, Haradrim's probably not the team to be building and going after, but once these characters become free-to-play farmable, I think it's Bekelu and I don't remember the name, Bekelu and whoever else. Let me see real quick. I have it right here in front of me. What am I doing? Yeah, Bekelu and Tibeb. Once they become free-to-play farmable and we can farm them, they will become more relevant. So, sorry, I've done a lot of talking at work today. My throat is fucked. But getting into this, like I said yesterday, we kind of want to build a mixture of light and shadow teams simultaneously. So what I've also done is I have gone through and I have essentially roadmapped out the teams that I am building on this account in order to succeed with it. So what we're looking at is Road to Rivendell, or not Road to Rivendell, sorry, Rivendell Elves, top performing team across the raid right now, along with Haradrim. On my main account, I did kind of dolphin out a little bit, and I bought Elrond because I love Lord of the Rings. I wanted to be relevant. I wanted to push points in this game. So I was happy to bite the bullet on that one. I really don't suggest spending money in these kind of games all that often, because it really just becomes a sunk cost fallacy. After a while, you start putting money into it, and then you start chasing the dragon because you kind of miss the growth you had when you're spending money. But I digress. With Rivendell Elves, your number one focus should be Rivendell Elves. If you don't have them, you should be farming your Elves right now so you can get Elrond the next go around. Now, the last AMA that came out Monday mentioned that Elrond's going to come out before the new year. If I remember correctly, where is our farmability list? So this is the farmability list that I've been using to track characters. Elrond here, we're at 93 days since he came out, and going off of the like Star Wars Galaxy of Hero timer, like he should be due any time. But realistically, with them kind of cryptically saying before the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised if we still have another month, maybe a little over a month, until he comes back out, because they rumored at another round of Eladin and Arwen marquees. So build your Rivendell Elves, farm them and build them. And if you don't have Elrond, you might be able to take advantage of a like 3-star marquee Legolas with some of these chapters, but it will pay off in the long run. So while I'm focusing Rivendell Elves, what did I say yesterday? With your crystals, you really want to farm one, or you want to gear one shadow team and one light team. So I've gone through, I've built Rivendell Elves. I'm still working on some of their ability materials, as well as farming stars, but I'm done leveling them, and I'm basically done gearing them. Lomion is only a couple pieces away from 8, and then I'll bite the bullet and push Arwen up, but I don't think pushing Arwen up gear levels is really going to improve her all that much. But moving on, our first shadow team I'm focusing on is Isengard. There's a couple reasons for it, really. I wanted to focus on at least 2 shadow, 2 light, and then focus on a 5th team. That was kind of optional what I wanted to focus on. And with the 2 shadow teams, obviously Haradrim comes to mind being the number 1 team, as we can see throughout all these chapters and from kind of our little scoring metric here. So Haradrim is the top performing team. However, I did not invest in buying shards for the characters when they came out, so I really can't take advantage of them and their star ranks to be able to really push and perform the way they're supposed to. So we're focusing on Isengard first. And why is that? When I said they're not great in chapter 3, and chapter 1 they're kind of they're very RNG-ish. Chapter 2, they're the number 1 team in chapter 2, and they're really the only shadow team that's out there that is fully free to play farmable. Goblins are close behind, but the Goblin King is still, or Great Goblin, whatever, is still locked behind that gem paywall. And the Bolg team isn't doing very well. Mordor is very meh. I built Mordor on my alt as my main team, and I think just by the sheer amount of investment they have, they're performing fairly decently. But what we're looking at here is like investment across the board. If you had like fully maxed out 7-star gear 8 characters, this is kind of what we're looking at. Isengard performs the best in chapter 2, and they're only free to play farmable 1. And my guild right now, our biggest struggle is chapter 2. Now we're fully clearing chapter 1, 2, and 3 at the moment. We're passing the 17 mil mark. So eventually once chapter 4 drops, we will be fully clearing the raid at least to chapter 4. Unknown how we're going to do that first week of chapter 4. But in order to guarantee that we're able to make that chapter 2 checkpoint, since that is the most difficult chapter thus far to actually score points in, I am personally investing in Isengard ASAP. I just got Ugly to 7 stars, and I'm working on farming the rest of them and gearing them and leveling them at the moment. Actually, I think Malher is like level 58 now. And so after that, so we've got the number 1 chapter 1 team, we've got the number 1 chapter 2 team in Rivendell Elves and Isengard. I decided to go with the number 1 chapter 3 team, Gondor. And the reason for that is I love Gondor. I love Boromir and Faramir's characters. Ever since I read the books as a kid, they were some of my favorite characters in the story. And in the movies too, like Sean Bean is just love it. I love Boromir. So I did dolphin out a little bit on Gondor, but these are the only 2 teams that I have really spent money on in the game. Your results may vary, obviously, using Gondor if you only have them all at 3 stars. But since I did spend money, I'm going to be working on them. But I would be farming them, Herendil and Sergeant Ara at least, so that you can use Gondor in chapter 3 going forward, and for when the rest of them become free to play farmable. But that is kind of my 3rd team that I've got sitting in the holster right now. And then my 4th team is Haradrim. And my kind of thinking behind this is Haradrim is the best performing shadow team when actually invested in. And by the time, obviously, I don't have the resources to work on them right now. I do have the energy to farm Yeftu and Robel, and I do have the guild currency to be able to farm Wubate out of the store. By the time Tibeb and Robel become free to play, or Tibeb and Bekelu rather become free to play farmable, and I can focus on them, I should be done with Isengard and ready to invest in my next Shadow team. So by the time I'm done with Isengard, we should be full steam ahead with Haradrim and pushing them. And then my final team that we've got here, we've got Rohan. Rohan is just performing very, very well across all chapters. Chapter 1, they are performing very well, just running the 3 E's and then kind of filling in whatever else you want with Ironhide or whoever, which because I'm not focusing on Mordor, I can actively dedicate Ironhide to being on this team. And then in the later chapters, we can run Wilfwin and Ealdred as well in order to make sure we have the full Rohan synergy. But TLDR, different teams are good in different chapters, and the way to maximize your resource input for your teams is to focus on teams that have multiple applicability across all the chapters of the raid. So we've got Rivendell Elves because they're good across all the chapters. We've got Haradrim because they're good across all the chapters. We've got Gondor because they're a top team in one chapter and should perform well across the other chapters. We've got Isengard because they're a top team in one chapter. They perform okay in one and then not so great in the third. And then Rohan's just solid across the board. And I'm not saying that you guys have to follow this same roadmap that I'm doing, but kind of the point of this video is in order to make sure that you are investing your resources properly, like we talked about yesterday, the biggest thing in these games, especially if you're free to play, is to have a plan. So it does take time, and not everybody enjoys their spreadsheet bullshit like I do. I fucking swear I spend as much time doing this as I do playing the actual games. I really think it's important as a free-to-play player to make sure that you are fully mapping out what you're going to do so that once you're done with one character or one team or whatever, you've got another in the holster you can reload and keep moving and keep pushing forward. Because as I said, you invest into the characters, you pull these characters into the raids, you do the raids, you do them well, you collect your rewards, you reinvest in your characters, and the cycle goes on and your account will grow consistently and quickly, and you will be clearing content before you know it. So if this helped you guys, let me know down in the comments. Let me know what teams you guys are working on. If you guys personally have teams that you enjoy that you think are ranked too low on this, like Mordor. I know Mordor's ranked really low on a lot of these chapters for the raid, but I'm actually seeing some decent output on my alt with them. But that's probably just because, again, I've got the team damn near maxed out. And I think any team, when it's fully maxed out, is going to be performing fairly well in the raid. It's just a matter of performing really well and performing like fucking incredibly well. So that's it for today, guys. If you guys enjoyed it, like the video, help that algorithm out, drop a comment down below, let me know what you're working on. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. And until next time, I'm Murph. Double hand wave. Bye.